Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time.
So today, we're going to deconstruct two massive systems, racism and patriarchy. And the key thing to get is that they don't just run on parallel tracks. Nope, they actually interlock, they work together to shape everything from who has power to how we perceive the world around us.
And just a quick heads up here, our focus isn't on pointing fingers or judging individual intentions. Instead, we're going to be looking at the big picture, the structural incentives, how these systems are actually designed, and the outcomes they're pretty much built to produce.
To help us see all this, we're turning to the incredible work of Bell Hooks. Her analysis gives us this powerful lens to see something kind of counterintuitive: how reform movements, the very groups trying to create change, can sometimes unintentionally end up reproducing the very exclusion they're fighting against.
All right, let's get into it. The book at the heart of our discussion is Ain't I a Woman?, a truly groundbreaking work by the celebrated cultural critic and feminist writer Bell Hooks. You see, Hooks wrote this book to put words to a very specific feeling of exclusion she had, especially within early feminist movements. It was like her experience as a Black woman just wasn't being seen. Her voice, and the voices of women like her, simply weren't being heard. She realized that to even have a real conversation, she first had to map out the hidden forces that were creating that silence.
So the book's central claim is this: Black women face a really unique form of oppression. And it's not about isolated prejudice here and there. No, it's about being in a structural position created by these overlapping systems of racism and sexism. It's the combination of the two that creates something entirely new.
And to really get a grip on this, Hooks says we have to go way back. We have to look at the system's origin point, the institution of slavery.
The book frames this almost like a machine, a system with a very clear logic. Think about it. Step 1 is the system design. In this case, chattel slavery. This design then creates step 2, the core incentives, things like massive economic gain and sexual exploitation. And what's the result? The structural outcome? Well, that's the profound and lasting devaluation of Black womanhood.
And this idea of devaluation was a really crucial gear in that machine. It was this historical perception of Black women as somehow fallen or sexually permissive, and that wasn't just a random stereotype. It was a tool used to justify their exploitation and to deny them the very status of womanhood that was afforded to others.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. How did this historical engine, this whole system, end up affecting the liberation movements that came much later?
Well, Hooks shows that both of the major liberation movements had a huge structural blind spot. On one side, you had feminist movements, which often centered the experiences of white women, basically assuming that sexism was the one-size-fits-all struggle for all women. On the other, you had Black liberation movements, which often centered the experiences of Black men, assuming that racism was the only struggle that mattered.
And this created a classic double bind. Sojourner Truth pointed this out way back in the 19th century. Black women were structurally caught right in the middle, positioned between two powerful movements, but neither one could fully see or acknowledge their specific reality.
So what's the result of being caught in that blind spot? Political invisibility. The specific, unique struggle of Black women just disappears from the conversation. Their identity, in a way, gets socialized right out of existence.
To help us really grasp this, the book gives us a fantastic metaphor. Think of it like stacked filters. Imagine racism is one colored filter and sexism is another. If you look through just one, you see a distorted picture. But the unique experience of Black women happens right where those two filters are stacked on top of each other. It creates a whole new color, a unique condition of oppression and invisibility that you literally cannot see by looking through just one filter at a time.
And that stacked filters idea, it's a brilliant way to see how the logic of this system keeps going today, even when the outward forms look totally different.
So that brings up a really critical question for today, right? How does a system that was designed for invisibility manage to keep functioning in an era that talks so much about inclusion?
Well, the book's logic points to this. The system keeps running when inclusion is more symbolic than structural. When we can point to progress on the surface, but the underlying incentives, the deep-down structure, haven't really changed. And those simpler stories, the ones that say it's just racism or it's just sexism, they actually help keep the machine running by hiding the more complex, interlocking truth.
Ultimately, what this kind of systems-level analysis does is it completely changes our perception. It gives us the tools to see how power really operates, even inside social movements.
It helps us understand how simple, easy-to-digest narratives can actually obscure the real structural causes of a problem. And maybe most importantly, it shows us exactly why these systems are so darn resilient, why they keep reproducing themselves, even when they're under critique.
This episode is based on Ain't I a Woman? Black Women and Feminism by Bell Hooks.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis in perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.